Welcome back, everyone. We are here with the third session of the Forum app development. And today we will discuss the session management with Auth library. This is just the start, so join me and let's build a basic sign in and sign out function for our app. In the last video, we have done the auth setup with OAuth and GitHub. Here we will continue with the server action setup. So let's start by creating a new file inside the actions folder. Name it Next.js. We will use it to define the sign in and sign out function. One quick reminder, we already get these functions as built-in methods from auth file. We could use it directly, although it's better to keep them inside a server component for better readability. This is the ideal way to let other developers know what you are doing and how you are doing. Overall, it's a code optimization that I like. First of all, import everything from the auth file using asterisk symbol. The rest is pretty simple. We will define export for two async functions in this file. The first one is for sign in and another for sign out feature. We will use the sign in function provided by auth file to log into our app using GitHub. Currently, we have only configured GitHub for OAuth authentication, although we can use several other providers in a similar way. Check out the last video for complete details on OAuth. Back to our sign in function. Make sure it's an async function and call the built-in function with GitHub parameter. One important thing to note here, make sure this file is marked as server component with use server keyword, else you will get error. The second function is straightforward. Just call the built-in sign out function and it's done. This function can take a few parameters, but we'll talk about them later in another session. For now, call it without any parameters and it will work fine. Once done, let's test this implementation. Now move on to the dashboard page. I think the text doesn't seem right. Let's change it to sign in. Now, make sure our app is working properly. It must display the sign in button on top left corner. Okay, the button looks good, but it has no function yet. You can click it as much as you like, but nothing happens. Remember, we can't assign any hook or event handler directly to a button inside a server component. And the home page is a server component by default. Therefore, in order to make it work, we have to wrap the button inside a form element. Also, the form requires an action parameter to work, and we already have a sign and action built for this purpose. First of all, import all the actions and set the sign in function as the action to this form. Here, make sure the button is of type submit, else the form won't get submitted and the action will never be called. In simple words, nothing will happen on button click. There are a few workarounds for this issue, but that's for another session. For now, just follow my code and see if it works or not. Once we click on the sign in button, it will bring us to the GitHub login page. You'll see the request to authorize the Forum app, or whatever the name of your app. Simply authorize it by clicking on the green button, and it will redirect us back using the callback URL. You can see the callback URL with your token in the terminal. One small note, you will only see this page on first-time login. From them on GitHub, we'll do it in background on every next try. Similarly, we can try the sign out button, but unfortunately right now, we will not see any change in our screen. To observe this change, we have to add the session management feature. It is available from auth package. First, add the sign out button by duplicating the form. Only change the button text to sign out and the form action to the sign out function. Save the file and the sign out button is ready to test. But, as I said, you will not see any change in screen or in terminal, no matter how many times you click this button. To see any visible difference, we have to implement the session management in our app. The session management is very crucial for user authentication. It prevents unauthorized access to specific content and maintains privacy and primary security for individual users. Therefore, let's dive into the next important topic, session management. Session management is a two-part discussion. So, First, we'll see the implementation in server component. We will test this approach directly in the page.tsx file. Start by importing auth from auth file. Then store the result of auth function inside a constant named session. This function will return a future, hence add a wait keyword to normalize and also add async keyword to home function to make it a future function. The auth function will return the user object with all the necessary data related to the logged user. We have already defined the similar data structure in our Prisma model file. You can check it out for revision. Here we will use this user object from the session constant to show appropriate result. Add a reference, and if checked below the form. Here we will show the message for sign in user or sign out. The implementation is self-explanatory. Just follow my code and observe each step carefully. We can also check the whole JSON object containing the user details. Usually, this approach is not recommended in production level app. I'm showing it just for the demonstration. We have to use stringify method from JSON library. It will convert the entire user JSON object into a readable string. It will display the username, email address, image URL, ID, and other details directly from GitHub. Make sure you don't leave this code in your production app. That's it for session management in server component. I know there's a lot left for discussion. We'll continue this later during server action coding phase. For now, let's dive into the client component side. Interestingly, most of our session management will be handled inside client components. Therefore, understanding this section is as important as the session management itself. The implementation of session in client component requires some configurations. Don't worry, this is a one-time process. Before that, let's create a new profile component to demonstrate the session management. Make sure to mark this file with use client keyword. Then, open the provider.tsx file. Inside it, import the session provider from Next.auth React library. Then simply wrap the Next UI provider with this session provider and save this file. Now, import the useSession method from Next.auth library. We will need this to get the session data from our server. The implementation here may look similar, but it returns a different object set. Instead of user data, this client session will return a data object which has a nested user value. In server component, the session will provide user data, which may be null, but in client session, we will have a data object which in return have a user object. Here the data object may be null, and if it's not null, then we will definitely have a user object. This is the basic difference among both these implementations. Apart from their usages, all the received data will be same. Only difference is the response time. That is, the time required to receive the information will differ. The session will require a little more time to react. Soon you will see this behavior. Here the output of our profile component suggests, if there is a user present in the data, then show its name with signed in message. Otherwise, show that the user is signed out. In future videos, we will explore other possibilities of this implementation and improve the UI for better user experience. Now, to show this profile in our page. First import it, and then call the profile component below the form. Make sure you have placed some text to differentiate both server and client session data. You may use from client side as I did in my code. It is only for demonstration, so any text is fine. During the testing, You may find some latency in response time, especially with client session data. Don't worry, this is the natural behavior, and we will handle it in the next video. The main reason for this delay is the dual check for same data set. In server session, we get the user data directly from the client server, whereas in client component, it is first requested to the app server side, then the app retrieve this data from OAuth server. This flow will add some latency to the overall response time, but it only happens for the initial responses. You will not notice this issue on active production level app. Even after a few tries, this latency reduces a lot for the test development app. Next, let's add the username to show the data from client side. Copy the JSON stringify syntax from page.tsx to the profile.tsx file. Amend it with data object, and it's ready to display the username received from client session. Remember that we use auth function in server session. In client session, there's a use session method available for the same task. Only difference is with the return data structure and background functioning. I hope you get all that in today's video. Let me know if it was helpful. That's it for today's video. Here we learned about session implementation using auth in our Next.js form app. We implement the sign in and sign out features and check the session data from server component as well as the client component. I hope it is easy and understandable. Still having any issue or confusion, drop your queries and comment. Like this video to show some support and subscribe my channel. In the next video, we will continue building our form app. There's a lot left to do, so don't go anywhere. Hit that notification bell to stay updated for future videos. Keep learning and keep coding. Thanks for watching TechnoSpace with Sikant.